So let me introduce Mark first, no? Mark is a marketer and a young sustainability professional passionate about impact entrepreneurship. So he's currently working as a digital nomad that helps organizations with environmentally centered missions to create value and build partnerships that foster sustainable differentiation and protect the company's long-term viability. So Mark is also the Youth Champions Lead of the Philippine Parks and Biodiversity and the Vice Curator of the Global Shapers Manila, a community of young leaders initiated by the World Economic Forum. So Mark, welcome to the Eco Lens. Previously, actually, we worked together in Alexa Mira Society, as project coordinators for the different programs we had there. Um, Actually, curious ako, how did you start getting engaged with sustainability in general?
Yes, but first and foremost, thank you, Ian, for having me on your podcast. This is such a great honor. And yeah, okay. So in terms of the story how I started with sustainability, I'd like to think that my how I started with sustainability did come from a life changing experience. No, I believe it was a form of a collective experience from different advocacies that I've gone through. But if I can recall, I think it started when I was a fourth year college student. So that's where I joined a mini company intercollegiate competition, and we chose agriculture as our team. And that's where I encountered first the word sustainability. So that was 2016, and that was a year after the United Nations adopted the concept of the universal call known as the SDG, or the Sustainable Development Goals. With a primary mission to eradicate poverty, to reduce inequalities, and to protect the planet by 2030. And of course, as a business major, so I asked myself a question like, how can I be part of this global movement? Kasi I'm so interested as a business major, like what can I do to be able to be part of, to address challenges that we have in sustainability. So, and that question, I believe, led me to many purposeful discoveries about sustainability. So it's been 5 years, no, and every day I feel like my passion for sustainability continues to grow, continues to ablaze, and I feel like every day it always seeks me to continue dedicating my life, addressing the complex yet multifaceted challenges of sustainability. So I think this is like my mantra na I'd like to believe na I'd like to hope na in everything that I do, I hope this would always impact the people, the profit, and the planet. And I know that we also share that passion because that's why we get to work with the nonprofit organization called Alexa Mira Society, where we've introduced and collaborated to several sustainability programs.
Actually, I like na-mention mo yung SDGs, no? So we have 17, sobrang dami. And so definitely each one of us will relate somehow to one of these SDGs. For you, which of these SDGs are you mostly gravitating towards?
A lot, actually, a lot. But of course, bottom line, it's really the SDG 13, the climate actions. That's something that is very urgent. It's happening. And if we don't acknowledge it, and we don't recognize it, and we don't take actions in addressing it, I don't think what's the world would be like after 2030 or after 2050. How about you, Ian? Any bias SDG?
That's a good question. My bias SDG is economic growth and development.
Oh,
But because
that's the SDG number 8, right?
yes, exactly. Because like you, I
Mm-mm.
was a business major ever since, specifically
Mm-mm.
business management. And actually, we have sort of a similar story kung how we got into sustainability. So I also got into
Mm-mm.
pitching competitions, and that's when I started this urban farming project with a friend of mine. I'm sure you know him. And so
Yeah.
yeah, so definitely with since we have these common interests, diba, that's the most important part about the
Mm-mm.
SDGs. And I like how you mentioned climate change, no, your goal on climate action with climate change. And that brings me to my next question. So, for you, what inspires you the most to take action on climate change? I think, but from what I know, you're also part of the climate reality leaders. So, could you tell more
Mm-mm.
about these initiatives and actions?
Okay. Well, my story with what inspires me to take action on climate change, as I mentioned, it did come from a life changing experience. I guess for me, it comes really from an understanding how the Philippines is very rich in terms of biodiversity and natural resources. And I think ever since we were young, that fact has already been there with us. But the very, very sad thing is that, the biodiversity is dying because also of us. I guess the human threats like the land use of change, that includes the illegal logging, the deforestation, the overexploitation of plants and animals, and the pollution, and many more. And that's been evident in our media nowadays. No, and it's very sad because because the earth that meant to bring a livable habitat for us humans is now being threatened because also of us. But I guess but my motivation doesn't end there. It's also coming from an understanding that if this continues, obviously there will be an imbalance in our ecosystem. That's for sure. So what would this mean for the stability and security of the people, most especially those minority groups who have been relying their livelihood, like for example in the ocean or in the forest, so I guess the answers to these questions sound may like negative, but rather I see it as a hope. Kasi I hope that when you continue clamoring the public and in the private sector, when you continue educate them the importance of it and how this benefits their business, especially on the green investment, and also making the people in power accountable, regulating some policies to take action on this issue. I think this would give us really a hope, not just when we grow old, but also for future generations. So I guess it's also like parang it's a hope na in the future generations there would be a world where people can still dream and can still experience the joy of these beautiful creations in this planet.
Ayun. Thanks, Mark. So, I like how you mentioned, earlier you mentioned na you don't mean to sound negative, no? And I resonate with that kasi, di ba, when we talk
Mm,
about sustainability, lagi tayo nagsisimula sa problem eh. It has to start with the problem. Because, di ba, if we don't
correct.
start with the problem, how will we know what we're trying to solve? So, definitely, I would agree na kumbaga it starts with why, and we keep asking ourselves, why are we doing this, alam mo yung process of
I
why.
agree.
And I super resonate with that. And this brings me to my next question. And
Mm,
so you've mentioned about leaders taking accountability on climate change, and we hear this very often in the media and among climate activists, and even among top climate scientists. So how do you think, in this regard, how do you think na the private sector should contribute to climate action, at least based on your experiences in the field?
Yeah, that's actually a great question and a tricky question. I don't have the answer for on how the private sector should act, but I'd like to believe that partnership is really the key. Partnerships have been very, very critical component to ensure that we can achieve the reimagined systems. And of course, the private sector definitely has a huge role to play in that mission because they have the power, they have the money, to drive change. And this is just based on the pillars of the organizations that I work with. So things that I'd like to highlight first is the investment. Syempre, I work for different industries. But two industries that I'd like to highlight is the biodiversity conservation industry, and then the other one is the energy. So in terms of biodiversity, so there's this actually study, a global study that says ecological restoration enhances biodiversity by 44%. So which means that if the businesses promote this endeavor, this can stretch their dollars further. I know money shouldn't be the ano talaga, the motivation, but I think this is always the um, um, first and big factor that one business should take into consideration before going into a certain investment, right? And and we know that it's not common knowledge naman na for the energy part naman, it's not a common knowledge how the fossil fuels are the largest contributor of the greenhouse gas emissions, and it is the actually the common source of electricity generation. But in the Philippine context, we know that renewable energy has already been highlighted, right? But I'd also like to highlight about the energy efficiency. Both RE and EE have a vital role, towards the sustainable energy transition. But in my case and my experience, whenever we visit sites and buildings, no, we saw and we witnessed that majority are still not utilizing the smart technology, that these technologies can actually monitor their energy consumption, and that's a big savings if ever this business would look into that. And also on a broader perspective naman, there's actually a growing demand for the technologies to across the energy sector, no, to keep the climate's target within reach, since the energy efficiency and the renewable energy, if they combine their power together, this we can they can parang provide 69% of emissions potential savings. And I believe when we are proactively working on that goal, the net zero by 2050 and the Paris Climate Agreement is still possible to achieve. So it's a lot. But yeah, I guess that's the first thing that comes to my mind. But I also have second thing, if I may add to that, Ian, because I've worked with a social enterprise before, and this social enterprise we've worked a lot in terms of ensuring the practices that we have in the supply chain and operation. So I believe the second thing that I'd like to highlight for the private sector to take, to for them to take action towards addressing these climate issue is that they have to ensure that their businesses or their operation do not harm the environment. It's simply by looking at their supply chain. They can check their raw materials, check its resources, like do they have the credibility or the certification in producing such. Kasi it's very important that the businesses should also look into how they are producing, distributing, consuming, and disposing resources. And from there, I believe we can look for ways how we can optimize its use, so we can somehow so we can somehow achieve the reduction in terms of our emissions. So ano pa? Well, sorry, one last thing, kasi I am really trying to put this into a very very positive note, because behind of these parang strategies that these private sectors can potentially do is actually a huge frustration of me inside of what's happening really in the corporate, right? There's a lot of political stuff happening, and etc. So I guess just one last thing to note for me is really about about the people. No, kasi about engaging people. People could mean their employees or the communities that they are supporting to. So it's very important then na not only the C-level executives are the ones um, who are having these understandings towards the importance of addressing climate issue, but rather we should always parang impart the value of these advocacies to our own people kasi kasi they serve as ano din as a brand ambassador of our company, so they serve as a good reputation. So if these people know what we do, why we do, and why we support these causes, I think sunod-sunod na yun yung parang ripple effects that can potentially do when everyone is knowledgeable about these threats and when everyone is doing something about it. So ayun.
All right, that's very comprehensive, no? So that ends our podcast.
Hmm.
No, I'm kidding. So I like how you mentioned 3 points, no, of different aspects of your experience, and I know na may experience ka rin in sustainability certification. Am I correct? With this social enterprise before. Actually, I'm curious with your experience there also because, for example, di ba here in our neighborhood in ASEAN. So recently, I read news that they're starting to develop further yung sustainability reporting standards.
Mm.
I wanted to know your thoughts on that. On where do you think we stand and where do we go from there?
Oh, that's really a very, very hard question for me. But okay. Well, I work with a Boston-based company, so we are providing green certification, rather sustainability certification. But our market is actually focusing on the small and medium to large enterprises because, for example, in the Philippine context, the Securities of Exchange Commission already institutionalized sustainability reporting. So, and that's only for the 271 publicly listed companies, if I am updated with the number. So, my experience with that is how about those businesses who do not fall under that category, right? So that's where we bridge that gap. So we are providing them the resources, the tools for them to be guided on how to green their business. But so I guess that's it. But I guess sustainability reporting is very important. We communicate our how we help restore, protect, and conserve our environment. But I guess it's just part of certification. Parang it's just a paper for me, but it's really a very very valuable tool because this is how you demonstrate that your company is committed towards sustainability. I don't have anything against the sustainability certification. I think that's very an essential tool for every businesses to have, so that more and more businesses would be encouraged to follow or to be compliant with sustainability reporting guidelines.
Right. So yeah, that's perfect. Actually, no, since we're talking about sustainability reporting na rin, and which is closely connected to corporate communications. I'm also curious kasi 'di ba when we talk about sustainability, we have a lot of technical jargon like carbon emissions, 2 degrees
Mm.
Celsius, and
Yeah, that's true.
ocean
That's true.
acidification, 'di ba? It's a lot of things. For companies, how do you think can they better communicate these to consumers? How do we communicate sustainability in an effective way so that it's not just limited to those who understand it. It's also, kumbaga, it's also being conveyed to those the simple consumers or your everyday people. How do you think we should do that?
Oh, that's a very Miss Universe question. Okay. You know what, Ian? I don't have a perfect answer to this question because this is still the parang one of the pillars of our organization. That's why we continue conducting programs to private sector so we could extend the education and how their employees or their people can understand the climate change issue in a way that it's not very technical for them. But I guess I just like to answer it in a way that I experience it because I didn't come from a science or engineering background. Like there are still a lot of jargons or too technical for me to really comprehend in this climate advocacy. But I guess when you start experiencing the challenges on the ground, like for example, volunteering to a certain community, and then you learn with people who have been in this industry, like, and learning with the experts. I guess this gives you really the idea, um, not only the idea, but really gives you the deeper understanding why this matters and why should we take part into this space. So I guess just additional note. So it's very important. The CSR department or the sustainability department plays a huge role for every businesses talaga. So if they can partner with certain environmental groups that can help them communicate science for people, I think that's one thing to unlock the myth that you don't need that actually you don't need a science degree to be able to understand the climate issues, or in a better phrase, I guess you don't need a science degree to be able to protect, conserve, and save the environment, diba? So we can do our own little ways, and we just really have to observe, look around it, and then check the available resources on the internet, and then I guess that starts from there.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you mentioned yung you don't need a science degree because, 'di ba, both of us can relate to that. Galing tayo sa business, you know.
True,
Initially,
true.
'di ba? Initially
Mm,
wala tayong idea ano ba yung carbon emission na yan. But of course, we learned along the
mm,
way. And so yeah, I would definitely echo that statement na you don't have
mm.
to be, a science degree. Kasi for example, 'di ba, sustainability is connected with literally everything. You know, if you think about law, may
Yes, true.
sustainability dyan. Physics, there's sustainability
Mm,
there. Even agriculture, so everything. Because sustainability is about the ecosystems, the world that we live in. So everything that's under that is part of sustainability. And
that's true, yeah.
this brings me to my next
Well,
question.
actually,
Yung
if
yeah,
I
go
can throw
ahead.
that question, if I can throw that question back to you, because I'm also interested since we come from a similar parang background, diba? Business background. So, like for example, when you where you are working a lot with private sectors, and usually this question asks na parang how do you communicate science to a non-science enthusiast people. So how do you usually explain sustainability or the problems that we have in the environment to them? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. Actually, I will answer that in the because I also work in academia, and usually
Mm,
what I notice is people tend to understand sustainability better if you use stories. Kasi 'di ba all of us are kumbaga we have this innate desire or innate we're gravitated towards stories. Eh. When we tell stories, people tend to listen. So, for example,
mm,
when we talk about the SDGs, for example, there's a lot of stories behind that, and whenever we go to communities, like for example, the one we experienced before sa Alexa Mira, diba?
right.
So there's a lot of stories that we can lift from that, and we even regularly post it in our social media, and we share it with other people. So I think for us to, siguro in my perspective, for us to be able to communicate sustainability, we need stories. We don't need like jargon. Like for example, whenever I hear several jargon, parang ano to, may exam ba, may quiz ba? So nakaka-pressure siya. Even for me na that's already in sustainability career path. But yeah,
Mm,
I definitely think na we need stories for that.
yeah, that's a good point. Stories sell then.
I agree. But of course, yeah, in Actually, this brings me to my next question, and it's sort of, I guess, similar to stories, no? Because I know
Mm,
na your background is a lot of it is with marketing, 'di ba? And even your
mm.
undergrad is marketing. Um, Paano mo kinonect yung marketing and sustainability? How do you think these two things combine, or how are they, how are they used in your professional life? Yeah.
Right. I think, my career with sustainability right now, well, sustainability is too broad, right? But it's still a minority industry, I believe. So I guess it just started with a belief na the sustainability space, sustainability industry has a space for everyone, and that includes you, even you are not a science or engineering graduate. So I guess just utilizing what the strengths you have, and then using it for whatever existing opportunities in the department. Like, for example, if it's marketing, it's always about communicating the stories, right? It's about how your story, how your brand or your business helps people or the planet by contributing to certain causes or certain groups.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, for me naman, well, honestly, I'm still looking for that, the fine line, the sweet spot, kumbaga.
Mm,
Kumbaga, I'm still exploring right now in sustainability, but I'm I'm looking into things like yung renewable energy and urban
mm,
planning. So those kinds of things. Well, mainly because it's part of my master's program ngayon. And I think
mm,
another point na nakuha ko doon is sustainability. It's very broad, and
mm.
like what's been mentioned to us constantly, ang daming fields, it involves several fields.
Right.
It's like
True.
sometimes I feel na you have to understand all of this, alam mo yun. But
Mm.
at the same time, we realize na there's SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals, which is very important. And I think that's when we would finally be able to, as you mentioned, yung ripple effect, diba?
Yes.
I
You know
wanted
what?
to, yeah.
I couldn't agree more when you mentioned about partnership. Like, as I said earlier, parang partnership is really the key. It's such a critical component talaga. And for me, just to add lang, kasi what amazes me these days, especially na I graduated from a marketing degree, is that even though I'm in the field of biodiversity conservation and I'm also working for an energy consulting company, parang 'di ba, parang who would hire someone na who doesn't have any science or engineering degree, no? Pero I realized marketing is really parang marketing has a demand for these spaces, and especially when we do marketing, it also involves with a lot of partnerships, and that's true, no, na parang itong mga different spectrum ng sustainability, masyado talagang technical. But if you're not a technical person, that's fine. You still have a space for this industry. Kasi for example, if you're marketing, I'm a marketing, what I do is that as long as you understand the challenges that your company is addressing, I think that's enough already to be able to tell it to your future clients or to your customers na this is what we stand for as a company, this is our why, and this is where we need your help.
All right. Actually, I think that's the perfect way to finish this segment, and that brings me to my next question.
Oh, we have
I like
another
how you
question.
put it. So, my next question is actually, so for the people listening, no, what would your advice be for them? I mean, siguro with the things na we mentioned so far, ang dami ng advice. But for us to
Mm-mm.
be focused on it, what advice would you give to people who want to get into sustainability?
Right. This is a very important, then we always share advice to these people kasi the sustainability needs more young people and more people to be involved and engaged. But I guess my message is specifically for those people who come from a non-science or engineering background, in my case, marketing, yet still wanted to pursue a path in this field. Well, I know that there is one perfect answer for this, but I'd like to tell these people that whatever background that you have, no, whatever background that you have, your strength can definitely be used or utilized in the sustainability space, and you can use that for your company's advantage. So in my case, as I keep on mentioning earlier, marketing and partnerships have been critical to my strengths, and I'm glad that I found a space for me to grow and contribute. And now that I think about it, there's no there's actually no advice that fits for all. Siyempre, we have different backgrounds, and that's for sure. Siguro cliche as it may sound, but I guess just be passionate about your interest with sustainability. Kasi di ba, when you are passionate about it, I believe in this na the universe shall conspire you to make it happen. The universe shall conspire you to be in the path where you envision yourself to be. And when you are passionate then, kasi it doesn't end lang with I'm passionate, but rather it's really with a desire. This desire, according to Napoleon Hill, is really the beginning of all the achievements. So it could be the beginning of your journey, looking for ways to replicate that desire into action. So siguro doon napapasok din yung ideas na you can join environmental groups or any NGOs that fit your interest or the causes that you are interested to explore, ganyan. And eventually you'll be meeting with like-minded people like you guys, now the sustainability bros, the sustainability gang, no, and until eventually the journey itself helps you define the path you'd like for yourself to be.
Actually, I have three words for that: law of attraction.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. All right. And that brings me to one last thing. So, on a final note, would you like to promote any initiative in particular?
Well, actually, a lot. Kidding.
Yeah,
But I
go
guess
ahead.
three things. Three things, no. So currently, I'm part of the Philippine Parks and Biodiversity. So we are launching this Generation Restoration Philippines movement. So this is our call from different sectors, and that includes the business sector, to unify efforts to come together and to pledge to restore ecosystems and different landscapes in the Philippines. So, I'm just one message away. I'm sure Ian can help me with that. And also the second thing, as I mentioned, I work also for an energy consulting company. So it's actually called Stratcon Philippines. So I know that the pandemic has made it more difficult for private sectors to implement energy efficiency programs. Kasi 'di ba parang they would rather hold on to their cash, or the business continuity, 'di ba? So, rather than becoming sustainable. Hence, it remains a challenge, laga, and that's something that we understand. However, I'd also like to tell these private sectors, these people na maybe we can look into another angle, no, na this could be an opportunity to look at renewable energy or energy efficiency programs in a way as an investment opportunity for a bigger cause. Now, kasi not only you get to optimize energy, not only you get to meet regulatory compliance from the government, but you also get to be part of the bigger cause, which is really having a world or having a healthy planet for future generations. So if ever you're interested with smart technologies that could help your buildings, I'm also that person you can message to. And I guess just one last thing. I'm sorry, I'm wearing so many hats. I guess last thing is this is my personal venture, and it's called Lalakbayan. So if you are interested with decarbonizing and greening the local tourism, maybe we can collaborate. That's
Ayan,
all,
so
Ian. Thank you for
Ayan,
thank you
so
for the free ano. Thanks a
So
lot.
if you're interested with biodiversity, energy efficiency, and sustainable tourism, you know where to go to. So
Yes,
I have
indeed.
one, yeah, 'di ba? I have one main keyword sa lahat ng napag-usapan natin so far. And would you agree with this? It's partnerships.
I couldn't agree more, Ian.
That's perfect. All right.
Partnership is the key.
That's all the time we have today for the Eco Lens, where we address the big and small questions and sustainability. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Ian, for having here.